Okay, y'all, it's time to start dealing some knockout blows. Alright, hola all, welcome back to Soul Mechanics. So, how do we begin with this? As I'm seeking about the, most especially the YouTube community, but all communities, the YouTube arena, the Facebook arena, most especially the Twitter land arena, wherein most of the more damaging or impacting battles are taking place. You say that's the battleground for this particular sort, the social media communities, I suppose you could say, social media oriented people, such as myself. I have become wholeheartedly an addict to social medias, and I love it. You know, there's nothing innately wrong with it. As with any tool, you know, it can be made use of in a positive or a negative manner. But you know, I spent most of my life, for the most part, sheltered. You could say, you know, I went through a lot of damaging scenarios, suffered abuses. You know, been through severely hazardous challenges, and you know, been all through the most treacherous areas in life. So, I mean, not sheltered in the way you might think of it as the newer generation, the more recent generations might consider it, but sheltered in the manner or by the measure of, you know, only really kind of being limited to a certain range, you know, a certain area and a certain range of peoples. Primarily my friends. I mean, I didn't really bother to get too involved with people that I didn't, you know, have an attachment to, have a positive relationship with. When I was younger and I hung out with some of the more dangerous peoples, you know, I got involved with little gangs and such, you know, racist gangs, drug dealers, shit like that. You know, I got involved with hazardous peoples, and we got in fights and we got in little gang wars and such. So I mean, I did get involved with enemies, you could say, in a manner of speaking, to some extent, but for the most part, I spent most of my life really only engaging with the people that were closest to me, that I cared the most for. And ironically, this would turn out to really not be anyone in my family, but an extended family that I've built, aside from my mom. You know, she's here. Say hello.
Hey guys, how you doing?
So,
trying to clean the house, but I gotta be quiet now.
Just don't vacuum. As I was saying, you know, traversing the social media arenas, I'm just like I hadn't really used the internet. Sorry, I got lost there for a second because there, but you could say I was meaning to say that I was sheltered to some extent in a manner. Sorry, I'm frustrated. I'm sick. I got sickly. It turns out the poisoning I had suffered was a little worse than I had anticipated. So bear with me. But anyways, I was not engaged in the internet. Like, I had no idea what was going on with the internet until a couple of years ago. I had no idea how amazing it was, what could be done with it. I am so deeply impressed and enthused by what can be done with this. The fact that I can make this YouTube channel with a damn telephone, it's just incredible. I think a lot of people are taking that for granted. The newer generations are growing up with this shit just, you know, just out of hand. Or just not out of hand. Well, it is out of hand. Never mind. Just something that they have, you know, readily available from the start. It's kind of, I feel kind of sad for them in a way, because they really couldn't possibly have the sense of appreciation for this technology that you know, prior generations would, such as myself or, you know, our elders, you know, having seen a world without this, where this was totally science fiction, and then actually seeing this come to fruition and being able to engage it in this way. It's just fascinating. But as I engage it more now, I'm becoming more aware. Like, I wasn't just off the internet for a while there, for almost 10 years really. I was kind of isolated entirely. I was just out of touch with the world entirely. I was training, I was taking after myself and those immediately near me, but, you know, pretty much isolating myself, not even really engaging with the world, having no idea what was going on. And as I keep trying to say here, let's get this done. As I begin to engage the social medias and the internet in general, I just become more and more frighteningly aware of how disturbing things are becoming in the world. And, you know, that's kind of the level that I'm at right now, where I'm just noticing how very, very disturbing and frightening things are out there, the way that people behave, the way that they think, and there are reasons for this behavior. It's not... We're at a turning point right now as regards our development as a species. And in this stage of development, it's becoming more and more impending a consideration that we actually begin to deal with the core issues we have in play as a species, the true enemies of humanity. And the problem is that we want to find an enemy outside of ourselves. We want to find an enemy that we can grasp, that we can blame, that we can, you know, that we can defeat in some way in a physical manner. and we start wars. We've done this forever and ever. We start wars with each other. We kill each other. We just behave like fucking savages, and we do the most atrocious and awful things. And, you know, it's not entirely not understandable. I mean, for instance, up till about a few moments ago, I was ready to walk out the door and go find this punk ass guy who, you know, is claiming to be a friend of my mom's, who's been scamming her and you know, treating her like a pile of shit, making her cry. And I might still do that, but he owes her money, and I had intended to take it from him one way or another, because he's refusing to give it to her. I mean, she did work for the guy. He promised to pay her. And now he's making up all this bullshit to try and blow her off, to try and scam her out of it. And this dude has done this consistently every fucking time she's dealt with him. And I want to hurt the guy. And I understand, you know, people wanting to hurt each other. I understand people having these emotions in play and these desires, is what I'm trying to say. But then I watched a really fucking hilarious video, and it cheered me up a bit. I'll give you a link for that. So I feel a little bit better now, but still, it's still the same scenario. Now, what this video, I intend to launch with this video, is another short series in the Sidetracks course, prepping for one of the catalysts, dealing with one of the catalyst events, because we are in fact going to begin dealing with the catalyst events directly and actually taking on the true enemies of humanity. There is no enemy out there. There are no monsters to be fought. There are no demons trying to, you know, possess or maneuver people. And then there certainly are no human enemies innately. You know, this is a ridiculous consideration to have. Anybody with eyes in their head should be able to note this. Just obviously, it's not. It shouldn't even be a consideration that we should treat another race or another country or what have you as an enemy to us. We are in this together, and we are in a fucking mess. We are in serious fucking trouble, and we need to clean shit up now. Or as I stated, we are at a turning point. It's going to go one way or the other, and it's going to happen relatively soon. If we don't start addressing the actual concerns that we have in play and stop fighting with each other, we're not going to make it. Now, one of the greatest enemies to humanity, and you could say that the only real, you know, just to speak of it, the only true enemy of humanity really is kind of like ghosts, you could say, in a manner of speaking. It's ghosts of old concerns, ghosts of old concepts, ghosts of old ideas, ghosts of people that have presented considerations that allot for us to justify lashing out at each other rather than dealing with ourselves. And these ghosts are haunting us all. They're haunting the whole damn world is haunted. by these ghosts. And one of the most concerning, most detrimental, most dangerous of ghosts amongst these, one of the most hazardous enemy we will have ever faced as a species is this concept of an ego. Now, several masters have alluded to the nature of the ego, such as the Buddha is one that I've brought to light several times. That the Buddha very clearly attempted to show us, most of us at least, that the ego is an illusion. He didn't, when he stated these things, he didn't mean that, you know, it's something that we should be fighting against. It's something that we should be attempting to escape or attempting to negotiate in some way. He didn't mean that it was an enemy to us or that it was in any way inhibiting us. He meant that it isn't real. It shouldn't even be a matter of concern, this concept of an ego, but it is in fact the biggest fucking concern we will have ever had, and we don't even see it happening. So vague, so broad, so simple and subtle it is. When religions such as Christianity bring up the concept of a devil character or Satan character, that's what the ego is. That's where that comes from. Obviously, as I've stated many times, the devil, Satan, that was not in the original scriptures. That's not something that they ever brought to light, but later on the Catholics brought it to light, and it was based on this concept of an ego. Essentially, what the ego is, it's an excuse. It's an escape measure. It's a method of which to pass the buck and to relieve ourselves of our inherent responsibility. To say that there is some other facet of ourselves, some aspect of our identities, that there is some devil character haunting us. You know, the ego initially really is a psychiatric term. As regards spirituality, it was brought up in the same sense, but ultimately it really coined as a psychiatric term and is to be regarded as a psychiatric ailment. It's a disability, essentially. It's a crutch. We use the ego to blame something other than ourselves, to say that something else is responsible, to justify the actions that we take in fear, in anger, in moments of desperation. And again, as I've stated so many times, it's all a matter of training. We've been very heavily conditioned to accept the ego as not only a part, an actual living part of our identities, of our persons, but as a priority aspect, as a value that's to be regarded every step of the way. That ego is there. Everybody's always thinking about the ego. Everybody's always battling the ego, most especially in the spiritual and metaphysical communities. There's always this idea of an ego coming into play. How does one deal with the ego? How does one negotiate or manage the ego? How does one overcome one's ego? There is no ego. It's you. You're making the decisions. You're in the fucking driver's seat. You're the one with your hands on the wheel and your foot on the pedal. And wherever you drive that vehicle, it's on you. If we could just manage to convince people to disregard this ego concept, to accept their inherent responsibility and accept the fact that they are responsible for the consequences of their actions, and that yes, indeed, there are consequences resounding from every move you make. And every time you do something in disrespect, in disregard, carelessly, recklessly, without consideration, every time that you feel the need to blame your ego for something, you've made a move that's damaging in some way. And the reason you're doing that is because you know it. You know this. We all know this. Nobody's blind to this. They just pretend to be. We need to be lucid here. We need to forget this woke bullshit, wake up and be actually lucid. Yes, you are in a dream state. Most people are living in a dream world. Why do you think we have this concept of the American dream? America's got it down pat. People who built America, they knew exactly what they were doing. They put every fucking single citizen that has ever lived in this country in a lifelong trap. A service position, a service without regard, what's the word, indentured slavery. You know, I mean, if you look into the origins of the United States, if you look into how this country was built and why it was built the way it was, you're going to find that it's seriously just a work farm. It was designed much like any prison would be. And the concepts that are derived from it, the concepts that are even presented in our very Constitution, we think that this presents us freedom. Because we're not seeing the values, we're looking at the aspects. We're allowing for these ghosts of past considerations to haunt and cloud our judgment of the present happening moment. And when people speak to the idea of living in the now, of being here now, and not letting your mind drift, you know, to the past or to the future, not to be fearful or anxious of the future, not to be, you know, angry or damaged by the past. This is an idea that people have in the metaphysical communities, especially in the spiritual communities, and even in other such communities, people have this idea of being present in the now. But something that has to be understood is that the past, and indeed even the future to some extent, is happening now. The point therein is to become aware of how these factors are affecting you and to address them respectively. You know, to see the values that are coming into play from your past experiences and to make use of them appropriately. You know, I'm going to attack this ego idea thoroughly. I'm going to make a whole series on this. We're going to work on it. I'm going to get Megan involved. We're going to do everything we can on this. I think I'm even going to put Casey on it, searching perhaps for the origins. I mean, I'm pretty sure I know the origins of the ego concept, but she'll likely find a hell of a lot more than I have equipped. In my mental inventory, she is just a masterwork of incredibility, that woman. But I'm really going to get this. I mean, the concept of the ego is almost like modern religion is to me. I mean, I lost friends to modern religion. I lost people I love to modern religion. And when I say loss, I mean to death, to suicide, you know, to other terminal factors. And where it comes to the ego, I actually just recently lost my partner, the guy who helped me build this, the guy who worked directly with us on building the initiative. He was really primarily responsible for the most of it. It was his house from which we launched our first notion of this, made that our headquarters, built our first library. This guy, he was collecting people and getting them interested in training before I even knew they were there, and put me on the case to train them, to be a spotter for them. I mean, this guy helped us build this brick by fucking brick, and then just recently, within the past year or so, I can't, you know, time stretches out for me. I don't know how long it's been. It seems a long while, but it could have been a couple months ago or so. I run into him again, and he's got this idea that he's like enlightened, that he's, you know, achieved enlightenment, and that he's somehow overcome the ego, but he had such a disregard for people's own sense of self-worth, you know. He would even go so far as to put people down for being proud of themselves, to put me down for being proud of what I've accomplished. You know, I'm very proud of myself for the things that I've managed to accomplish, for the things that I will accomplish. I'm proud of every fucking one of you that are watching this, because you will be affected in some way and you will make a positive difference because of it. Everybody that's working with the initiative, everybody that's even touched by it in some way, we're all going to be instrumental in changing things for the better and ensuring that we proceed into the next phase of development as a species. And I'm very, very proud of every one of you just for being here. Earth is a fucking dangerous place to be. I mean, we take it for granted, like there's no other game in town, insofar as we're concerned. But I mean, in the, you know, viewing the bigger picture, Earth is not for the weak. Earth is not a place for the timid. It's a very, very rough life here. And those of you that are engaged in it, that have the will to step up, take action, that have the will to provide leads or to take leads, to take action here, those of you that are in any way involved or engaged in this and have the desire to proceed, you have every right and reason to be exceptionally proud of yourselves. Don't ever let any fucking buddy tell you there's anything wrong with that. It's that pride in ourselves that fuels our achievements. It's that pride that allows for us to have the strength and the confidence to fight back against these ghosts, against these hauntings that are dividing us and conquering us, that nearly have destroyed us. I mean, there are things transpiring right now all over the world that are literally threatening our very existence as we speak, and people just don't even see it happening. They think it's commonplace. They think it's ordinary. A lot of them think it's actually good. We're in danger. We're in a battle. We are in a fight for our fucking lives right now. We need to step up to the plate. This concept of an ego, what allows for us to just dismiss our responsibility, that's what allows, that factor, that value right there is what allows for us to make so fucking many mistakes. That value installed in our operating system is what allows for us to just disregard our intuitive faculties, our very instincts, and then go ahead and just follow the flow of this very damaged and poorly managed world. But as I was saying about a friend of mine, he was, just he thought that he was in some way free from the illusion that he had beat the game, because he essentially looked down on anybody who didn't agree with that notion. That, I mean, the dude wrote a book, okay, wrote an excellent book, but though his name is on the cover of the book, he didn't want anybody mentioning that he had written it, because he felt that was being too prideful, and there was something wrong with that. Like, he actually treated it as though it was a sin. He might have even used that word at one point. I mean, he was putting himself down, he was putting other people down, and when I raised this notion to him, I said, listen, what you're doing here is being egotistical insofar as regards your concept of an ego. You need to throw that away. You need to get rid of that. It's only a hindrance. It's one of the biggest blockades that you'll ever come up against. And so he got mad and he blocked me and ran away, and I'm certain that he's continuing to go out there and convince other people that there's something inherently wrong with feeling good about who you are and what you've done and can do. It's a sad state of affairs. So I'm going to have to just go ahead and heavily advise against taking that route, that so-called enlightenment route, or Satori. We'll get into that. I made some videos in the Sidetracks series. I believe they were titled Enlightenment or something to that effect. I'll put links in the description so you guys can check them out. Those videos were actually made precisely for him, so it gets into this ego idea and it delves into it a little deeper than this video will have. But this was just an introduction. I'm not feeling well right now. I wanted to get this done because there's a certain person that I promised I would make this for, and it's important to keep your word. It's important to follow up on your, on the values you put into play. It's important to be loyal. It's important to be genuine. It's important to be honest and honorable. It's important to essentially stand up for yourself and not let these excuses defeat you. So this will be the introductory video for the ego. There will be links in the description to other videos that can help out, prep you for the next ones. They'll come up as soon as I can get them done. Thank you all for watching. Kilo Salai, Teriyuni Siari. Namaste.
Namaste.